Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om 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 Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we can read from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, chapter 27, text 2. Saraja Mahisim Rajan.
Saraja Mahashim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastasya Hyanam.
Kritasvastayanam
Kritasvastyayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastasyayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja Mahisim Rajan.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastasyayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam. Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastyayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastyayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastyayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastyayanam Triptam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja
Mahishim Rajan.
Sushnatam Ruchirananam.
Kritasvastayanam Triptam.
Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saraja Mahishim Rajan. Sushnatam Ruchirananam. Kritasvastayanam Triptam. Abhyanandat Upagatam.
Saha he Raja the king Mahishim the queen Rajan o king Sushnatam nicely bathed Ruchira Ananam attractive face Kritasvashtiyanam dressed with auspicious garments and ornaments Triptam satisfied Abhyanandat he welcomed Upagatam approached. Translation. The queen took her bath and dressed herself nicely with all auspicious garments and ornaments. After taking food and becoming completely satisfied, she returned to the king. Upon seeing her beautifully decorated, attractive face, the king welcomed her with all devotion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A woman is generally accustomed to dress herself nicely with fine garments and decorative ornaments. She may even sometimes wear flowers in her hair. Men especially dress themselves up in the evening because the husband comes home in the evening after working hard all day. It is the duty of the wife to dress herself up very nicely so that when her husband returns home, he becomes attracted to her dress and cleanliness and thus becomes satisfied. In other words, the wife is the inspiration of all good intelligence. Upon seeing one's wife dressed nicely, one can think very soberly about family business. When a person is too anxious about family affairs, he cannot discharge his family duties nicely. A wife is therefore supposed to be an inspiration and should keep the husband's intelligence in good order so that they can combinedly prosecute the affairs of family life without impediment. Padaya Krishna Prastaya Mutala Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devam Guravani Prachanya Vishesha Sunivadi Pashkati Vishwami. The queen took her bath and dressed herself nicely with all auspicious garments and ornaments. After taking food and becoming completely satisfied, she returned to the king. Upon seeing her beautifully decorated, attractive face, the king welcomed her with all devotion. Well, here we are again on social issues in Srimad Bhagavatam, issues which are generally popular because people are exposed to these situations all the time. And we should right away from the beginning can point out that Bhagavatam brings up these issues, even it's the Purana for the Paramahamsas, which seems to be of a mundane nature. But the only reason we find these things in Bhagavatam is because they are essential for becoming more peaceful to conduct spiritual life. The point is made here very simple, that once in a married life, it's the role of the queen, whatever queen it is. We don't have many queens in Kali Yuga. So whatever queen it is, the whole atmosphere of the home is set by that woman. That's repeatedly mentioned in the Shastra. Therefore, quite contrary to the accusations we sometimes face that women are some sort of, inferior decoration material, you could say, or simply tools for sanskritification or some kind of slavery. This is not at all true. They play a very essential role in a society because the society will be conducted mostly by grihasthas in a practical sense. They will be the ones. It doesn't matter if it was in a Vedic times or if this is the allegorical story of King Puranjana. It is always like that the society consists mostly of grihasthas or family men who are the majority. Then there will be some brahmacharis, and then there will be some sannyasis. And of course, the spiritual input or the backbone of the society is the sannyasis, and is, you could even use the analogy of the body. I mean, the backbone doesn't appear to be very visible in your body even, it's not, even from the volume, it's not the biggest part of your body, It's not as big as the shoulders, it's not as big as the belly, and, But when you take the backbone out, the whole thing collapses. It's finished. And those that have problems with backbones, they can confirm these problems with the backbones, they give problems to the whole body. You become practically invalid. If you have a problem with the backbone, the whole body, all the nerves, all the lines goes to the backbone. Everything is sustained, the whole body rests on the backbone. So the sannyasis and brahmacharis, they are the backbone of the society in a spiritual sense. But in a daily sense of the family affairs, in the functioning, women play a very essential role. And however satisfied they may be, well bathed and nicely dressed, and well fed, their satisfaction, which we know from the Bhagavad Gita, is not possible. One cannot be satisfied on a level of bathing, eating and decorating. It's not possible simply because it doesn't satisfy the soul, ultimately. But from a psychological point of view, a woman can be of immense help for the man if she is loyal. And loyal doesn't mean stupidly loyal. You know, like kind of dog. Dog can be loyal, it will go with you anywhere, you know, it will follow you anywhere, you know. It doesn't sink even, you can take the dog in a dangerous circumstance. Dog is so loyal, it will follow you. It will follow you almost into fire. Dogs are so loyal. But that's stupid. So it is not loyalty, doesn't mean stupidity. You know, and women know very cleverly, they know, those they are clever, they know that yes, they have the input, and very, very important input, very valuable input. But it's done through loyalty and humility. And that's difficult. That's a really austerity. Sometimes to tell the husband, not you stupid fool, what are you doing? But to tell him, my dear husband, O Swami, my master, and then bring the point across anyway. You know, you don't tell him, my dear stupid idiot master. It doesn't make any sense. It requires a great deal of diplomacy, and from a practical experience, you know, women can be very good diplomats. Because you can see it in the political field. They become more prominent. I just recently statistics. How many countries in the world are ruled by women officially? Many. And it's increasing. Because they are very good in diplomatics. They are, you know, they are, of course, ultimately, when it breaks down, you find behind each single one of these women, there is a man. They have their, you know, mentors. They have their, you know, unofficial advisors and gurus. I could use the example of the German, you know, leading lady, you know, which is popular in one sense. But she is just a product, a child of a previous leader, you know, or the leader before the previous leader, who practically raised her to this position. He treated her like a daughter, you know, and until today, she relates to him almost like to her father. If there's some really severe problem, that's the first one she goes to for a counsel, you know. And he is always, yes, my girl, keep on going, you know. So actually the role is, it goes on the same thing, you know. So it's a mutual cooperation. It's a mutual thing. And for, we see those grihasthas who do function, and we know from practical experience, a man once married, he needs this. That's the reason he's getting married. You know, he needs this support. Now women say, well, wait a minute, I got married to get a support. You know, and that's true. So it's a mutual support. It's a very, very actually delicate game to be played. You know, not to actually losing. Once the support is not there, everything is destroyed. And you can do whatever you want. You know, Prabhupada 3 times repeated it in a lecture when he came to it. When a husband and wife fight, it's all destroyed. There's no money, there's no auspiciousness, there's nothing. It will be all destroyed. And that, it takes its toll on a society. This will be visible in a society. Therefore you see the society actually, one the major reason society is in such a miserable position, you could say practically, materially spoken, is because there is no cooperation between men and women. You know, in a spiritual sense, of course, that's the ultimate reason that people don't care for spiritual life. But in a practical daily affairs, and you see it, sometimes in devotees get a little bit perplexed. Like, how is it that karmis, sometimes even meat-eaters, they appear to be more peaceful as devotees sometimes, They are kind of settled. You can see sometimes from parents, examples of parents of devotees. They are sometimes more like kind of settled, sometimes, and they appear like more balanced, like, yes, life is like this, they grow old together, like this. And amongst devotees you find sometimes so much agitation and so much uproar all the time, So, this shloka of course provokes as we are on the subject matter, but it is the only way to survive Grihastha Ashrama is when one bases on that principle. And it's not a walk through a rose garden, not at all. Maya hits here and there will be challenges. We are living in a society where we are constantly challenged, and there will be challenges. And women get ideas, I have enough of this, because actually it's not just a matter of husband and wife, it's the whole society is destroyed around us. Like women and even men, both ways, they need also other things as just being married. They need social outlets, you could say, places where they can go. In India, it was it is still visible in some places. Like that the women and the men, they have actually, these are two societies. The women, they have their association, they associate with each other. And they are women simply amongst each other. And the men, they have their association, and then they kind of come together in a frame of family life. But the family life is more or less like you could say it's just a meeting point. Actually, it sounds a little bit harsh and impersonal, but it is really. I could quote one of my godbrothers, a very learned, extremely learned person, who said, well, from my point of view, I see men and women simply coming together for the purpose of procreation, and that's it. They simply, like, amongst animals, it's even more severe. Like the bears, they walk alone. You don't see ever really having a big family life. And once a year, by instinct, they meet, and they have sex, and then she has the children, and he's walking off again somewhere, just like that, looking for new berries in a forest. It's like, that's animal life. Amongst humans, of course, there's more obligation. But essentially spoken, one cannot expect too much from these things. One cannot expect this happy, forever thereafter with the family and all this. It's not happening. You don't see it anywhere. Children are growing up, and even Prabhupada said, that's the only department I really failed. I couldn't make my family more Krishna conscious. And even he tried very responsibly to earn money, make business, maintain the family, like that. But it was simply, we can now speculate why it was not given to him and this. But we find it nowadays as a very inspiring example what Prabhupada did in that situation, how he handled the situation. And it was not to his liking, You cannot say that he was a too happy Grihastha. No. There was a lot of beauty. Starting with the fact that he didn't feel really emotionally so attracted right away at the point of marriage to his wife. You could say he was not falling in love. But he was more duty-bound to his father, who very wisely told him, you married this girl. So he actually, the impetus of Prabhupada's life to marry was simply to follow the advice of his father. And later on, Prabhupada, openly in a lecture, he said, I became so grateful to my father. So he saved me from this obsessive attachment, from this, falling in love. This is like a very dangerous game. It's actually falling in lust, falling in, you are obsessed. You cannot live without that person. You are attached. You are totally dependent. It's like drug addict. You just, I must have it. I must have it. And how do you want to conduct a relationship on that level? It turns very quickly into hatred, actually. Isn't it hatred? It's love and hatred are very close to each other, you know, yeah. Especially I would say the female part first, you know, because it's very unpalatable for the female to have such an addicted man who just always, you know, stares at you, always wants sense gratification, because it burdens the woman incredibly. I have to fulfill his, you know, his attachment. I have to serve up to the level of his attachment. Now, in the beginning, when you are young, this may be not the problem, because it's all just hormonal, you know. I used sometimes, even in discussing with Kamis, I use the expression hormonal foaming, you know, it's like, you know, it's like you throw these tablets, this bruise tablet, you know, you throw them in a water and goes, you know, but then after a while it just stops foaming and it's just a normal water in the cup, you know. That's the reality of the situation. So this initial, you know, hormonal foaming, it looks very exciting, and people make movies about this and they write books about this, but it's over sooner or later. Then you end up with the reality of the situation. And the reality we find in Krishna conscious way. Actually, I feel lectures on like this, on this shloka, should be given in two parts, you know, actually, because we are dealing with man, woman. So actually, the first part should be spoken by a man and the second by a woman. Actually, it should be a double lecture here, because I tell you quite frankly, I couldn't comment more or go more in detail, because until today, I can tell you honestly, I have no idea who these women are. You cannot understand the workings of the psychological work. You can only go along the Shastra. That's a good information. Thank you very much for the information. But essentially to understand like this each other, it's not possible. For women, the men are also just, you know, what does he want at the end? What is this? You know, usually when men get fired up, women are not so fired up. You know, men get fired up over a very different thing, like women. And they think very differently. Men are always constructing in their minds. Even the most stupid man will construct in his mind how to be stupid. He will be, you know, like scheming, plan, blueprint. Here we go. Yeah? A woman never really, she has also a plan, but usually it's totally emotionally motivated. They think in pictures, you know. Oh, it's going to be like this. And then it's not like that. And then comes the crisis, okay? Therefore, that's the only reason Shastra says they cannot be trusted, because they think in pictures, in emotional expectations. You know, even sometimes being very qualified, materially spoken, you know, they still an emotional basis. You know, now you can say men too, men do that too. They also have their dreams and, you know, and this. But men are always in a constructive way. They work towards the dream in a constructive way, you know. How much it costs, place, you know, circumstances, you know, yeah, how to get to it, okay? They calculate. And they can sustain that much longer as women in that way. Because they have a blueprint, how it should be. You could see it even in temple management, you know, like, I can give you a guarantee, the more females are dominating the temple management, which is also there, the more the social aspects become prominent. And the more men dominate the management, the more the constructive aspects become, you know, like, you know, we need balconies to be fixed, and this has to be done, and we need new structure in the temple. We have to structure it in a new way, you know, and we have to go and apply new structure to achieve more success. And the women, they are more like, yeah, but you know, look, people come to the temple and they get frustrated, and we have to take care of them, you know, which is also very important. Both aspects are actually very important. So once it comes to the point of cooperation, it becomes very productive. Because you need both things. You cannot just live from structures. And you cannot just live from patting people on the shoulder and being nice to them. You need some system. So you need some organization. So both things has to be there. Organization and also you could could call it the human part, the human aspect, has to be there. So actually, once it is applied, especially in preaching, it's very nice. Like Prabhupada did that. He did this as the only and the first Acharya in the history of Vaishnavism. He did that. He put women into the preaching field. He even gave them the access to live in a temple. He called it brahmacharini, which the word you don't find in the Bhagavatam. You know, yeah, we have to call it something. You know, and he put them into the preaching field. That's totally revolutionary. I remember first time the Matajis, the Western Matajis came in India, started to preach. It was a shock for the Indians. You know, they were just collecting around these American Matajis, just punching, you know, them BTGs on them, you know, doing Harinam. They never saw this before like this. In India, when you see the old-fashioned parikramas in India, it's funny when villages go some parikrama, you know, to see this. It's like sometimes they bring even the cows, you know, with them, you know. So the procession is always the man. There's a group of men in front. Then come the women, then comes the cows, and then comes another group of men behind who is checking that nobody is spacing out. Neither the cows or the women. You know, they keep the whole thing in shape. And then they walk together, a whole village like this, from one holy place to another. It's really powerful organization. I saw it a few times. You know, it's like, and then the women go, and the men go, you know, and when the calves goes like, they go, the same thing, you know. And then just, you know, they keep it in shape, you know. So, but of course, for us, the Indian mentality, for Westerners, it's sometimes difficult to understand because they always have a stick in their hand. But in Europe, to have a stick in a hand, it's always a very, he is beating somebody. You know, they actually don't beat anybody. They just have the stick as a, you know, as a tool, just to, you know, to show the stick. But so I never actually saw in India much people beating anybody. But you know, but they have it as a, you know, as a thing. So it's, you could say, different culture, but essentially spoken, in the essence, this is how Krishna arranged it. And this is how it's going to be. It doesn't matter what we scheme up here and what we feel like we should change. No, we can feel so many things. It doesn't matter. It's going to be like that. You know. What do the feministic women do when they come together? They talk only about men. They don't talk about women. They talk about men. In a negative way. It doesn't matter. Positive or negatively. They are hooked up on them anyway. You know. So you cannot change this. So why to struggle so much against these things? Why not just agree? Let's have some more peaceful time. Okay? And Prabhupada gave several times examples which I believe were not unmotivated because Prabhupada didn't experience really much harmony in his Grihastha ashrama. So, but he always was on these points very strong. That, you know, he never said, look at me how, you know, I was such a happy Grihastha. He never said that. But he pointed out, I just heard a lecture, he just said, seeing a very simple man transporting, you know, they have this in India, this two-wheel carriages, which are almost as big as to be pulled by a horse, but actually it's pulled by a man. You know, they push them or they pull them, you know, and sometimes they have a quite big load on this. So Prabhupada gives example, such a man, he was transporting some goods for somebody, having that carriage full of stuff, and he was pulling, and on top of that carriage was still sitting his wife, and I think minimum 2-3 children, something like that. And they were all happy. Family. Even the man was so simple, he was just transporting a very menial service, but they were a family. And they were doing things together. And this is very rare to be seen nowadays. You know, nowadays family, where do you see this? That family is actually together. The children go this way, they do their own thing. The wife is working here, the man is working there. They meet in the evening, maybe in the flat sometimes, just to eat something together. Maybe, probably not you know, I had a practical experience in Czech Republic not a long time ago. The boss of the private school, the owner of the private language school I was affiliated with, was a very, you could say, very, they would call it powerful woman. Well, she wasn't so powerful. She was just big in size, but a good manager, very, very, very reasonable, very reasonable with people, very good judgment of people, except of one thing. She had never really big service attitude towards her husband. I saw it. I was several times invited to their home, and I saw how the husband is completely living on his own, sitting in the evening on a computer, and she is running her business, inviting guests like me, and dealing with me, and he was like, I was just thinking, and they had a small child, 1 year old. So I was thinking, how long this will last? It lasted 1 year. And then came the big news. The husband filed divorce. And of course it was not right, but it's like an example how it goes. But she was so funny. In front of him, she was telling me, my husband, he wants to eat something, I tell him, we have the cookbooks here on the shelf. Cook it yourself. Ha 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 ha. Because I have no time, my business here, like that. In his presence, she was saying this kind of thing. Now the man was stupid. I could see it. He was not, he was not very bright. But ultimately, demanding his type of sense gratification, and then she completely was surprised. I don't know why, she used me as some sort of a counselor. What do I have to do with this? But she sensed by that time that I know something she doesn't know. So she started to ask me questions. Do you know why my husband is doing that? I didn't step into that trap. Sometimes people invite you to be kind of counselor, just to blame you later on how stupid you are, that you don't have the magical formula to make them happy. Yeah. It's like conditioned souls are usually like that. Many spiritual masters experience this kind of treatment. That they are approached for spiritual guidance, they are approached, but actually people expect them to be some magicians, to bring some magical formula in their lives which makes you happy in one day, yeah. And if you don't do it, get out. You are the wrong guy, Managers experience that. It's always the doom of every manager that they are supposed to make everybody happy. If they don't, get out. As we used to joke in our manager days, if the temple president cannot make money like a Vaishya, work hard like a Shudra, protect everybody like a Kshatriya, and preach like a Brahmana, get him out! Well, first of all, you find some person who is like that. It's a little secret, they don't exist. There's always something which you will find that person is actually not, according to the expectations, right? It's always like that. And then they say, get rid of him. They get rid of him and then there's nobody. And, who else? And then comes the next, and then he out. I mean, there are temples I experienced, which changed their crew, like, on a daily basis almost. And this is not very impressive for people. They can see that. It's not very impressive for preaching, when they see it's constantly changing here. This guy out, this guy in, out, And it doesn't matter what's going on, since we are on the issue in a temple. But people coming and seeing the same faces, that's preaching in itself. They see, oh, you are still here, the same person. Well, there must be something serious about this. There must be something real about this. If that person is doing the same thing, for 20 years, people start to see this. And they think, oh, that's not just a joke. It cannot be just some mental idea. This is serious. So people become like this. They become attracted and serious simply by the steadiness of the devotees. Now sometimes it's difficult, and you want to go more in detail, but it applies in the same way to the situation of the family. If you see, like a wife, tolerating the family up and downs, there will be up and downs. And still, being loyal and still going along with the husband through this sometimes very difficult times, that's impressive. That's preaching, because it's not according to one's sensual satisfaction. Not at all. The senses will tell you, get out, change it, find something else, find somebody else. This one is better as this one, or that one is much better, yes. And I tell you quite frankly, it's not very difficult to cheat women. Of course you can cheat a man too, but there are men who are really almost professional. They go around and simply cheat women, even for money. Not just for plain sense gratification, for money. There are plenty of men like this out there, and those women who come to Krishna consciousness, they know that. Usually they already had some good experience of this. We don't have some innocent, bhaktis coming in most of the time. Very rare. You find it in India. There's lots of innocence still there because there is a social structure to protect. Here in the West, a girl, 20 years old girl, is almost like a jungle warrior, coming out of the jungle, just, with the head of the last man, she cut off, and goes, that was a fool, and that's like called Bhakti program, Let's be realistic. These girls sometimes, they have very severe experiences and very heavy things. So that's the reason why we all come to Krishna consciousness, to get protected. To stop this, to bring it to the end. This mutual exploitation, this cheating, this hypocrisy. There's one thing in a relationship of a man and woman also, there's no need of any hypocrisy really. No need. One will, you cannot cheat. The one will very easily discover the weakness of the other one. That's the reason one gets married. Actually, I know from the brahmachari point of view, most of the brahmacharis get married with this expectation that I just want some place. I was a false brahmachari, I can see it. I was trying, but it really doesn't work. So now I can relax, I can find the female association where I can be actually that what I am. I am a sentimental guy, what can I do, So, I just want to have some cozy corner where I just kind of relax, and I don't have to play this game of a heavy tapasvi guy, and all this struggle and all these cold showers and all this, brahmacharya social pressure, I just want to relax, just to come home and there is a queen, who is going, how are you, because brahmacharya is rarely asked himself, how are you, it's sometimes a little bit like, like living in the army, In the army they don't ask you in the evening, how are you, They just go, report, and then they go, So, brahmacharya ashram sometimes feels like that, and you feel like, I need something more, I need somebody who pets me on the head and goes, you are okay, and it will be okay, and it's just a little thing sometimes, very little thing. Devotees usually don't have big expectations. They know this is not going to be perfect, really. But a little encouragement sometimes helps. And women can be incredibly useful at this point. Very useful. I saw Mataji's picking up a broken man and get them going far. I could use a very heavy example. It's a long, long time ago. You could say it's almost 35 years ago, okay, somewhere in Germany. We were all brahmacharis, I joined this movement in Germany. There was the only Grihastha was the temple president. And his wife was more feared by us as brahmacharis, bhaktas, as him. She was so strict, and she had 20 Matajis under her command. And these Matajis were trained brahmacharinis. Nobody was married. They were trained in a way you cannot imagine. This was a female army. They were all going on Sankirtan preaching. They were, Sunday was like I was almost afraid on Sunday to. The only compensation you got for this, because this Mataji, the wife of the temple president, she was a fantastic cook. So when she cooked the Sunday feast, we almost died on that amount of prasadam we were consuming. Yeah. It was just fantastic her cooking. But to get to that point, this was heavy. Every Sunday I had to go in the kitchen, and as a bhakta and as relatively a new devotee, I had to cut my potatoes and do these things. And if I would dare in a kitchen, that's usually the field where male and female meet. Okay? So if I would even dare to cut the potatoes close to some Mataji, which was cutting the carrots on the other side of the table, if I would even dare, there was a cooking spoon coming between me and her from above. That was the wife of the temple president. Like a warning, don't even think about it. So we were all just, it was a very tense atmosphere in the kitchen. And the Mataji would just, yes, well, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. And the men were just, the brahmacharis were just, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, I am just cutting potatoes, nothing to do with it. It was very tense. Of course, finally, after some years, everybody got married. That's another thing. But it was very well framed like this. So I just, joined the movement like this. There was no talk about this Grihastha ashrama. It was very heavy. This was like banned almost. Like the Bhagavatam was edited. It was like these shlokas didn't exist. I never found a lecture about this. That's one of the reasons why practically all the brahmacharis who were getting married entered that Grihastha ashramas totally unprepared. Never heard about it, never knew what to do with it. They just somehow it had to happen on a certain point. Because they entered that Grihastha ashrama with no idea what is going to come. There was no even facility for that. And of course the result was a little bit accordingly also. It was just one disaster after another. That's all. So it is a very responsible thing to do. And and nowadays actually new Grihasthas, if they want, they have a great facility because they can actually go to the old ones and ask and inquire, how do you do that? What it's coming to you? Because the challenges and the problems are quite similar. It's not something that is specific going on. It's always repeating the same situations, the same challenges, the same problems coming up. So it's like that. So, and beware of professional counselors. People who think that they have to go around and teach perfect Grihastha ashrama. Well. Let's see. It's a fight. Let's be realistic. It's a challenge. The principles are given here, right out here. Don't back away from this. It's a vow. Once you go in front of the deities, once you make that promise, you promise Krishna, and that's it. No changes. I just heard a story of one spiritual master in ISKCON who, when hearing and seeing that his Brahmin-initiated disciple is whimsically and despite all the warnings divorcing, closing in his room, personally cuts his Brahmin string to make clear to him, not with me, not under my guidance. It's heavy. It's a heavy stuff. But sometimes you have to hang a monkey. When you see how whimsically people do this kind of thing. And you will find even nowadays counselors and people who think, yeah, well, You have to be happy, you know. You have to be happy. If you are unhappy, you cannot happy serve Krishna. So make yourself happy. Go for another one. Try. Try. And there are definitely devotees who did whimsically do that under Maya's influence. And devotees who didn't want to do it and it happened to them anyway. You know, it's just so much karma involved sometimes. That sometimes devotees struggle. No, I'm not going to divorce. Happened anyway. And you can change nothing about it. So it is not like a black and white thing. We would preach here, not at all. Just to be very individually considered. The real thing is that at the end, they are both devotees. And they are just keeping on going. It happened in Prabhupada's presence. And it seems like, in the very, very rare cases, Prabhupada did agree on divorce. You know. But I would very strongly say that this was his choice. It was under very specific circumstances. And it should never be, taken as some kind of facility or a rule. Yeah, one can do it like that. Because how else we can actually, conduct our spiritual life? Prabhupada himself, he was accused by his godbrothers that he is actually a marriage guru. He's a marriage maker. When they found out that he, as a sannyasi, is actually arranging marriages. This is unheard of. What does a sannyas to do with this? So he got heavily criticized from his godbrother. Hey, look what Abhay Babu is doing in the West. Yeah. Just marrying. He's a marriage maker. Because they couldn't understand the disastrous situation of the Western society. And Prabhupada himself, in the beginning it was wild. I still experience certain things, like first time I came to Czech Republic after the communism fell. I came to a very small flat in Prague, where the very early devotees were preaching. Like, the communism was finished, it was a great atmosphere, and preaching was very enthusiastic. And they lived in a small flat, in a Prague. It's still, the location exists. It's one of the restaurants in Prague. And they lived there, boys and girls, just in one pile, just together, practically in one room. There was cupboards you pushed from the wall, like a little piece, and then there was a string, which you could pull like a curtain, like this, was hanging some gumshoe on it. And behind the cupboards, that was the Brahmacharini ashram. And, on the other side of the cupboards, that was the Brahmachari ashram. Nobody was married. But they were living together like this in one room. Making programs there, everything was in one room, actually. So sometimes, the Brahmacharis went, behind the curtain and shake the Mataji in a sleeping bag, Mangalati, wake up, wake up! And this, wow! I was already like, 20 years, 25 years in ISKCON, so it was all, I never experienced anything like that, because I already joined under very strict rules. So I was just laughing. They were going, why are you laughing? We are all happy here. We are chanting, preaching, all together. And I was just going off out. Of course, nowadays it's very different, Yeah. But that was the initial. Prabhupada had the same thing. He was even living there, with these hippies, and they were all he and she and all together, and, and all in big pile, Yeah, and there was no really, rules. So Prabhupada, one Sunday, when he saw the time is coming, he said, it's finished. Everybody gets married. You and you, you and you, you and you. They were shocked. What? I have to marry here? Oh, what is this? Yeah. Wow. In one Sunday, Prabhupada did the whole thing. Because he already had that credit. They were all very devoted to him. So he could do this there instead. And of course, nobody had really much idea what they are heading for, but Prabhupada was in the center, and that gave it all like, that was actually the only thing they knew. We are going to serve Prabhupada. And he wants us to do this, so okay, we have to do it. One cannot say that all these marriages became a success. Not really, But Prabhupada said, otherwise we become, he used the term, laughing stock of society. They will just laugh about us. They will think, yeah, it's a bunch of hippies, so what? They chant Hare Krishna, so what? It's a hippie Hare Krishna, yeah. No, Prabhupada wanted that actually things become serious and people start to take this seriously. And even in America, which is like, very feministic and very things, but there is enough groups and there is enough orthodox people who will stand up for that principle and who will fully agree on these principles laid down in Bhagavatam. And they are not devout, they are not Vaishnavas, they are Christians, but they will firmly stand behind the principles. There are people still. In every country you still find people who actually will be inspired when they see somebody sticking firmly to that principle. It's like my father, he never chanted in his life, really. He is a meat eater in that sense. But once being confronted with the rule that in Hare Krishna you don't divorce, and seeing me doing that, he became very respectful. Because he never did that. He never did that. For him, it was out of question. He was just, sticking it out for, you could say 50 years with my mother, who was at the end very sick, he never left here, he was always just there, yeah. So and he was not really a special moralist even. He was a musician, yeah. And all his colleagues and all his friends were doing all kinds of things. Don't tell me, I can tell you all. When I hear orchestra, classical music, I see only a monkey house. It's just monkeys. Sorry. They always go, maestro. For me it's just a bunch of monkeys. It's all everybody with everybody everywhere. It's like an animal society. Worse, like stand-up people, but they look like very, culture. It's a culture, right? Yeah. It's all, when you look, where is the culture? Where do we have the culture? This is our problem in Krishna consciousness. Where is the culture? Like you preach here in Denmark. I mean, really, where is the culture? What a place. And I don't know Denmark much even so much. I never was here for too long time. But what a place. And it was known already in the 60s, way back. This whole Scandinavia, Sweden, Denmark and this. All these first really sexual liberation things and this KKK, they came from here. It was here they declared to be free of all these rules. So of course, it's still there. But even more so, an island has to be maintained and created. It's like an island, for those who actually want to come and see some culture. Which starts with mutual respect. Which starts with loyalty. We don't expect any queens here, walking around. But it's so nice and so inspiring to see Matajis who are loyal, who are, keeping a certain kind of culture. This is very powerful. It's like, it gives the whole thing a culture background. That's one of the reasons also why the Indian community is still, giving even our preaching sometimes a certain culture frame, because they bring the culture with them. And for many of them, nowadays of course not anymore so much, but still very much, these kind of principles are common sense. They just do follow it. And in this way, they bring, they put some background to our, preaching. We can say, oh, this is actually the culture, we would like to preach here. This is actually a culture. Culture is not everything, it's just the background. If I'm mentioning the word background, the real thing is that that's the background to cultivate spiritual life. That's actually the real goal. But how can we have a spiritual life in an animalistic society? Prabhupada very firmly here says A man will not be even peacefully able to be conducting his family affairs when the wife is a disturbance. You know, you cannot do that. And it's a very simple, every grihastha can totally confirm that it's a very simple thing. You know, women become very powerful on that chastity level. When they are chaste, they become extremely powerful. They gain, actually, most of the time, we can see it, they gain even control over the man. That's exactly what the feminists want. You know, they just actually get very much control over the man, in a nice way. You know, and sometimes men tend to be harsh, men tend to be too over-constructive, too much thinking, you know. Men sometimes want to think it all the way through to the last detail, you know. They want to know what will happen, you know, 5 years from now. They want to have it lined out, you know. And you cannot have it like this. So the man's brain starts to cook, you know, and we have to really calculate all the risks, you know. We have to know it all. And that's very helpful when the woman comes, you know, and goes, come on. We just think about tomorrow, you know, we do like this. Why not? You know, yeah. Therefore women are such a strong survivors. Men can even break down at a certain point. When all his calculations break down, all this, then men can become desperate. But women, they're always like, hey, you know, there's still 4 walls here, and we can sleep here, so we have to get some food, let's go, you know, bang, you know, and sometimes in a crisis situation, women are just, let's do it, you know, yeah, don't be ridiculous, you know, stop thinking and just do it, you know, and it's needed sometimes. Sometimes in emergency, you have to just do it, you know, yeah. And then comes the other extreme, when the women become emotionally so affected, then they just break down, unpredictable. They just break down. Oh, the whole world hates us, and then the man goes, you know, oh, come on, let's go, you know. So it's complementing. Both things are very productive. You know, especially when it's applied towards Krishna consciousness and preaching. This is power. This becomes very powerful. Prabhupada, you know, I didn't know it until many years. I didn't know it because it was never told to us. It was actually omitted, you know. Prabhupada said, after he sent his first Grihastha couples to London, you know, to preach, where all his godbrothers went before. And within 1 or I think 2 years, these 2 couples, you know, cultivated Georgianism, created a whole temple. Bhaktivedanta Mena came by the preaching of the Grihasthas. Prabhupada said very proudly, he said, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was preaching through his sannyasis and brahmacharis. I am preaching through my Grihasthas. He was very proud of that. And Prabhupada himself, coming from a Grihastha background, you know, he knew very well. So he had actually high expectation towards his Grihasthas. You know, he was expecting a lot. And he was so proud they did this kind of thing, you know. They did this and they took that austerity. There was even a child involved, you know. They lived there somewhere. From nowhere, they created this temple. They actually, through their preaching. Prabhupada was so proud of that. So he had expectations actually that Grihasthas become a very potent part of his preaching. You know. And we wished sometimes, this is my private little prayer, we wish today that Prabhupada would be available for more counsel because things moved nowadays to a level which the majority of the devotees are Grihasthas. When I joined, the majority of the devotees were brahmacharis. So now the majority is Grihasthas. So how much more counsel we would need from Srila Prabhupada with practical questions, practical challenges we face. How much of this Vedic culture we can implement, how much we cannot right now do. We have to compromise on a certain level. Yes, some compromise we have to do. You know, because we are surrounded by this. We have most of the Grihasthas fighting in a ghastly way for their existence. Because Grihastha, when you get into this subject, then you have to start to speak about varnashrama, you have to start to speak about means of income. Prabhupada had a whole concept to this, which we are far away from, yeah. And then you come to the farming communities, which he expected grihasthas to be. I don't want to even mention that Mayapur was meant originally as a grihastha community. It's like, this was a whole plan for that. I don't want to even mention that Prabhupada that grihastha should not live in Vrindavan. He said Vrindavan is for brahmacharis and sannyasis. Mayapur we have for grihasthas, for residential purposes. Anyway, it's a whole thing. There's so many complexities and problems connected to that, which we met on the way, but Prabhupada wasn't there anymore to take the direct counsel from him. But it's anyway already happening, that grihasthas are helping each other individually. I know that very previous GBC, once upon a time, he saw this coming. And he had a dream that he will create a whole generation of economically capable and productive grihasthas who will in turn hire and engage the less, let's say, business-minded grihasthas. And in this way, we will have our own economy. I heard in some other, religious communities it's happening actually. That they actually help each other. They do engage each other. They arrange the one who is more, together organizing business. He will create an income for the other ones who are not so together or who are of a different quality, Then you have a Brahminical grihastha, that's a completely different issue. That's the one who should be maintained by the rest for their preaching. Like that. Oh, that's a completely different issue. Here now we are still in a situation where every grihastha is very much on his own, struggling for his survival like mad. Unless you don't have a good inheritance, you didn't rob the bank, or something like that, which we don't do, then you are ending up very often in situations where you have to be just really struggling for your survival. And especially when the children arise on a scene, that's a very different ballgame. As long as you have two grown-up people working together, then life is relatively easy. But when the child comes, or children, in India they don't count one child, That's for them means nothing. It has to be, always like more than, So in the West, you cannot afford even one child. It's just a luxury. How do you do that? It's like, it's so much struggle involved. So we need spiritual support, we need spiritual inspiration, we need the guidance of Bhagavatam, but one thing we can do, we don't have to fight each other in the marriage. One doesn't have to do this. And everybody has to pay the price for it. There's always price to be paid. And those women who take that price, they become spiritually strong. Simply on that one principle, just to do. They become very spiritually strong. And those they don't, usually we see, they have a hard time. A really hard time. They will anyway end up. Sometimes Prabhupada also gave up. When Mataji came to him and they're going, Prabhupada, I have to get married. Prabhupada looked at the picture of Gopal on the wall and he said, isn't Krishna beautiful? And when Prabhupada said it, you got the real realization coming along with that. Yes, Krishna is beautiful. So that girl was going, yes, Krishna is so beautiful. And Prabhupada said, why don't you marry him? That was the end of the discussion. That was in that particular case. But in some other cases, he was going differently. He was going, no, you have to get married. So don't ask me how the first marriages look like. I wasn't there, but I heard from my brothers who were entering the Grihastha ashrama around that time. It was not so much different from taking sannyas and entering Grihastha ashrama, The first generation of Grihasthas, they lived so austere you cannot even imagine. They were piling on top of each other, just living practically like in a temple, it was wild. There was no sense of privacy, you know. It was just like this, and it didn't last really like that, of course, because ultimately you have to have some privacy as a grihastha. This is unavoidable, and it should be there, you know. Now, what is too much? What is too little? But Prabhupada said that grihasthas can live in a temple, but they have to be very simple. Well, what he meant by that can be also defined. There's discussions, you know. This is all issues which are constantly under discussion. In general, we see that grihasthas function best when they live outside and contribute to the temple. Come as much as they can and do as much as they can do. That's basically the most ideal situation. Because in the temple, bringing them too close to brahmacharis, it never turned out to be very, very productive. Because brahmacharis get affected, yes, they get affected. And then you soon don't have, usually it leads to an extinction of the brahmachari ashrama. At the end, they're just that.
You said that most, that is also said that it's very good to have temple presidents.
Prabhupada didn't establish it as an ultimate rule, but it turns out that way anyway. And you have even sannyasi temple president, brahmachari temple president, but you always find they manage through a grihastha. Of course, it's common sense. Because what is a temple president dealing with? Money and women. So you want to have it with brahmachari? It's money and women. Little fame to it, little fame, little like this position. Well, that's great, you know. Then you are right away in a shooting range of all the matajis. Not all, but you know, that's like the essence, you know, where women get spontaneously activated. He is the man who is controlling others, who has some capital he can control, and you know, and who is managing the matajis. And after all, I'm a helpless mataji, please take care of me. And then, you know, and Prabhupada wrote in the Bhagavatam, Temple President must take care of lonely women. And I know it was serious, and I had my good share of taste of this. You end up asking yourself, am I managing a harem here or what? You know, what am I managing here, damn it? You know, it's like, because naturally, women will take shelter. Just the word president, I forbade this in Sweden. He said, nobody will address me as a president here, especially not in a public program. Because Swedish people are so averse to this, you know. Those days I always felt like Bush, you know, like the president of the United States, Mr. Bush, you know. So when there was a school program and I got sometimes announced, like, here comes our temple president, and all the school kids immediately, you know, you know, it's like, so I said, don't mention that president, please. It's a horrifying word for the Swedes, especially. Just say this is Manidhara, and he will say something. That's all. That's enough. You know, this is not the days and times for big temple presidents, you know, big signs, you know, some president, come on, big car, you know. These are not the days for this. That you can do in other countries. In India, it's good. They have this temple president with 20 silk garments, you know, exiting the, you know, Toyota, you know, Toyota Cruiser, you know, Jeep. Oh, immediately, you know, 100 Indians are falling in the dust. Oh, Maharaj. They call you Maharaj, you are not a Maharaj. It doesn't matter. That's, Prabhupada said actually, this is still a culture there, which we can use. And here in the West, you know, you do this, you know, immediately so much envy and so much, you know, aversion, because people got cheated, and people are by nature actually very averse to these things. So it's not the way to preach here at all.
And yesterday you mentioned abortion is bad, and also we know Prabhupada mentioned and like this. But if for example, we have a case where the first baby is like between 10 and 15 months old, and the mother is pregnant, and then she is sick, and then and there may be, if she gives birth to the second baby when the first one is also pretty young, then there may be, you know, risk to her life maybe or something.
Yes.
So she is pretty sick. So in that case, can we allow then that she can abort the second one? Or?
For sure not. The question
So
is
let her
actually,
die.
you have to go back to the first question, how did she get pregnant? Just happened, right? By, you know, just out of nowhere or what? So then, once again, you are confronted with these issues because we have no culture. There's no, you know, how does it get a woman pregnant like this? So by nature's law, if you are sick, you don't get a child. Okay? By nature's law. And that's another thing, oh boy, to go into this. I mean, you know, how difficult it is to get children at all nowadays. It's not easy. Not easy. Because, you know, previously, and I saw it here in Sweden, in Korsnäs. A girl was, I don't know, she was 19, 20, got a child. It was like a joke. She got pregnant, she got a child, she was 1 week at home and then she was back in her service again. I was like, you know, I was going, wow, far, you know. Yeah, how's your child? Well, it's okay. You know. But Prabhupada said, what's the use to having children when you are older like 20? So here we go again, the culture. Okay? In a Vedic culture, it was completely, I mean, Prabhupada's wife was, I think, 13 or what, when she got 14. Engaged. 14. Yeah.
Not engaged, but I think she had a child when she was 14.
Huh?
She had a child when she was 14.
She had a child when she was 14.
14.
Yeah. Which leads to the fact that by the time you are leading, or your body, or you are getting old, to the, let's say, you know, the children are grown up, then what? Then you are 35, 40, and then vanaprastha. You know how easy that is? And you know what happens amongst devotees? I give you an outline of a life of a devotee. Okay? After a rather sinful life, burning your brain with drugs and who knows what, you know, you join Krishna consciousness movement. Okay? By the age of, if you are lucky, let's say 22. Okay? And you take it seriously. You try to be a brahmachari. By the time you are established in a brahmacharya ashram and you are trained as a brahmachari, you are maybe 35. Let's say. Okay? An example. Maybe even 40. Then you realize, no, actually, I'm not really brahmachari, I have to get married. Let's say you are 35. When you get married, before I said when you marriage, you are reaching the 40s. By the age of 40, you have a child. Which gives you automatically the time schedule that you can go vanaprastha by the age of, 60. At best. Okay? So by the age of 60, maybe you have your vanaprastha, if you are lucky. Before you are situated in your vanaprastha heading for sannyas, well, you should be maybe 80, or 90, or 100. According to that schedule, you should live at least 120 years. So you come, into the... this is ridiculous. It's all removed. It's all post-dated. It's all moved out. So that's what we are struggling with. And we hoped, and Prabhupada hoped, that in a later generation of devotees this will stabilize. The devotees actually get children at the right time, go through the whole thing at the right time, renounce the whole thing at the right time. It's a timing. Now we are in a complete confused schedule. And I tell you, it brings so many problems. Women are getting children being 40 years old. Brings so many problems. For the man too. By the time the woman should be actually a grandmother, she's mother. That's also very heavy for that woman to struggle with this, you know. And it's like, oh, you know. And on top of that, you try to have some spiritual life. It's very challenging issues we have here on land. So therefore, you know, we hope it may be stabilizing by introducing some culture. And ultimately, you know, we are devotees. In any situation, we have to surrender and, you know, depend on Krishna's mercy. I met last summer, I met a godbrother. He's 1-2 years old like me. He has a 7-year-old son. So what do you think? And he's a very nice devotee, very responsible. So, but what do you think? What, you know, how many years more he has to hang in this whole thing? And I tell you quite frankly, the enthusiasm, especially when you are a little bit serious about spiritual life, the enthusiasm for these kind of things is vanishing. Yeah? It's not like you get fired up. Yeah, 60, let's get another family, great, another child, yeah. This is ridiculous. Therefore, there's time for everything. That's when you are young, you have that drive, you know, and you have that thing, you know, and it should fit in that age. Now we have a good excuse, like I'm coming from a generation, we have a good excuse. We missed all this because we were preaching. Okay? We are like the, you know, we were preaching. I was not hanging around playing with girls or hanging around having a good time and missing my, you know, grihastha development at the right time. No, we were just preaching, even as a grihastha. You know. But I don't want to be too autobiographic, but I would not recommend nowadays everybody necessarily to go this way. Like getting married and then 14 years, nothing, no child, nothing, just preaching. You know. And I have to say, my wife is a good old ISKCON fanatic. You know, I didn't have a problem with this. But I didn't know that she has maybe a problem with this, with which she, under intense social pressure, couldn't actually communicate to anybody, including her own spiritual master, who ultimately himself realized there is a problem, yes. And she got more or less the instruction to have a child by the age of 40. You know, it was not really an instruction. As a matter of fact, he didn't even spoke to her, he spoke to me. I was going, what? And I was just laughing. I was 40 years old, or 41 years old. I was just laughing. I said, I was completely out of my mind, these things. And I just said, me becoming a father? I told him, I will become a grandfather. I feel like a grandfather already. It's just a joke. It was completely beyond that. What to speak of a 40 years old woman getting pregnant? It's dangerous. Very dangerous. We were lucky. Because from this you get damaged children. From this you get this. We were very lucky. And it was, tell you, it's hard work. It's nothing to do with some romantics or something, forget it. It's just doing the needful because I was put in front of the choice. Yes, you don't have to do it. Then probably your wife will become so agitated. She will have a really hard time. And you can, you know, go and take some lessons. You want to do that? I said immediately, no. I knew that would be a wrong thing. For me. For others, yeah, okay. So I knew that. So I was saying, okay, then I have to pay the price. And I tell you, the price is pretty big. It's pretty high. And it gets higher. Up to the point you ask yourself, hey, I cannot pay the price, I'm bankrupt, you know, it's like, I have no more money to pay, you know, it's like, you know. But I'm not alone with this. There are quite few devotees of my generation who actually go through this as well. So, it's not that uncommon. Because by the time we were supposed to do all these things, we were preaching, and we were just thinking that we will go on this forever, like this.
There's some issues when, like this case you're mentioning now, with spiritual master giving you an instruction, and maybe it doesn't seem so, or not is the right instruction, I don't know. So how should we see it, as Krishna's mercy or misjudgment, or?
Retrospectively, you mean like that?
Yeah.
I don't want to get too controversial, but seeing, there are two kinds of spiritual masters I met on the way. Those who are still attempting to give some counsel on these issues, and those who say absolutely not. This is your problem, not my problem. You got initiated by me not for this purpose, so I can tell you when and how many children, and and how to do it, and just forget it. I'm a sannyasi. I will teach you about Krishna. I can speak about spiritual life. Regarding your children, family life, and this, you are grihastha now, do it. It's your thing, your responsibility, your choice. You have to grow up and make these decisions yourself. I think it's more productive, that line, as seeing some of my godbrothers being so entangled with this, and ultimately we all dissolve. Sometimes they have to pay a very heavy price. Because, when you have 3,000 of these, asking how many children they should have, then your mind becomes so preoccupied with these things, you may come to the conclusion, well, maybe I should also have some children, or I don't know what, You just become simply, digested by this. This is not very productive, then you cannot help anybody. The beauty of a sannyasi is that, he keeps himself aloof from these things. That's needed. That's even a help to a grihastha. I need in my life not somebody who comes and tells me, all kinds of very, emotional grihastha issues. I have to face it daily. But I need somebody who tells me, actually it's Maya. And who lives like this. Who just tells me, that actually, this is your karma that you have to suffer like this. There's lots of karma. And most don't. That's one of the biggest mistakes when grihasthas always expect that this is like a transcendental thing, Getting married. It's completely transcendental. It's like your lila or what. It's just a transcendental. No, there is a lot of karma there. It's not a chance sometimes that this is your life. And that this happens. And that you have to pay her back this. You say, what? Why should I do this? No, that's from previous life. It's coming. Maybe it's somebody you have to pay back and he is dressed up as your wife. Or maybe she has to pay back to you. I see more as Grihastha Ashram as a payback time. And then you wonder why this person acts something like this? Why is this like this? But this is just a shadow from the past. This is something which is coming. It's not and I'm not really an astrologer, and I believe that we are devotees. We should actually conduct our lives more in devotional considerations as astrological considerations. But it's also there. And when the children comes, you think, what do you think? Who is coming? This is all, people from the past who were somewhat affiliated with you. It's not a chance that this person becoming your child. I saw sometimes children, parents don't like to see it like this, and they shouldn't see it like this, but sometimes the children are simply people who came to pay you back for what you have done to them in a previous lifetime. You don't suspect them because you think, this is my child. No, this is the guy from the last lifetime who came to pay you back. Take it. Then parents are shocked. How can my child be like that? They try. And no, payback time. Yeah. It's very complex. Soda Sama said once very nicely. He said, it's a very complex ashrama, this Grihastha ashrama. Very complicated. Very complex. Whereby sannyas and brahmacharya is relatively a straight thing, you know. Just get up in the morning and chant and go ahead. You have no other responsibilities as that. In Grihastha ashrama you are entering a whole field of intricate, complicated things. It's like when many Grihasthas don't know that when you get married there is somebody called relatives, you know. And they are not devotees in the West. They come like out of nowhere, you know. Like out of the bushes they come, you know. Hello, we are the relatives. And you go like, oh, I didn't see these people for, you know, for so many years. And who are these people? And they all come, we are relatives now. Please come and join us and visit us and do things with us. And when you have a child, they become almost like cannibals, you know, they just come, oh, another member of the dynasty, very nice, you know, they almost like take it away from you, you think, hey, this is my child, you know, and this child should be a devotee, and they go, nah, he looks so skinny, he should eat some sausages, that's good for health, you know, that's the Western narratives, you know, and then you struggle with that, you think, no, you have to protect your child from the relatives. No, you know. And they come, they will try to bribe the child and they will try to influence. And there's so many things which come, so much complication. In India, because there's still culture, the problem is also there, but it's, at least they are vegetarians, you know. But it's also very intense. In India, it's even more intense. You can end up with 300 relatives, you know. It's just like I was once invited to a marriage in India. It was like 300 relatives coming, you know. Like a whole town came together for that marriage. And I asked, so many guests you have here. This is interesting. And they go, no, it's all relatives. You know, the whole army of people all moving in, you know. And they all have their own thing, you know. I don't know if it's still practiced in India, you know, but they had a really good organization on this. It was a marriage going for 1 week. And everything was accounted for. They had a book where all the gifts to the couple were accounted for, so when somebody else in the amongst relatives gets married, you return the same amount of gifts to them. It was all really, for Indian circumstances, very well managed. It was going on day after day. I was going like, oh, 1 week festival like this, you know. Monstrous amount of money they spend there, you know, with pandals and all kinds of things, and those bride and husband on a white horse coming in, and you know, and it's a whole thing. And then that was it. And then what do? Babies, because you know, this Western people, they have no idea. Yesterday we spoke about Jaipur and about this. I got to Jaipur first time. I was still a brahmachari for a certain purpose anyway. And I was accompanied and met in Jaipur by a young man who met me already in a Delhi train station and who was very eager to show me Jaipur. I was thinking he has some purpose behind those. No, actually, he just was really eager to show me Jaipur. And so he went with me around, and I was brahmachari, you know, he had a little moped. And I was sitting in the back, and he was driving me around, which was quite helpful in my project. And then he introduced me to his family. He was one of these, what they call this thing around?
Jains?
Huh?
Jains?
Jain. He was a Jain. He brought me even to his Jain guru, the Jain temple. The Guruji was sitting on a Vyasasana giving darshan naked. You know, this is because the ultimate renunciation in the Jains is that you are, because they follow Rishabh. They have this Rishabh idea. So you are naked, nothing. And he gave darshan to three Matajis that they were sitting there. Yes, Guru Maharaj, he was sitting naked on the Vyasasana. And it was just in the temple, I just came in. And he showed me the Guru Maharaj, the chai. Then he brought me home. He was just married. He just got married. He had a very young wife. She looked real, almost like a child, And he said, this is my wife, this is my relatives. There was a huge feast there. They cooked up the whole thing. There's every day like this. And I told him, so what are you doing now? He said, nothing. This is not here that you get married and you have to have a job. No. First of all, my wife has to get a child. That's important. And then within 1-2 years, I'm expected to become productive, of course. Within the relatives, already with their businesses, they already have prepared for him what to do. But he was very cool, he was very happy. Working, getting married and working, why should I do that? For 1-2 years, first we have a child, and then, and then I will do something. Of course I will do something, but why to hurry? I was just sitting there, I was just laughing, seeing these desperate Western family people, running around, I need some money.